Some deaths on TV hit like a gut punch, and in Stranger Things Season 4, no moment shattered fans more than Eddie Munson's last stand. He was the misfit, the scapegoat, the outcast with a heart of gold and a guitar that could shake the world. And just when we started to see the real Eddie, the one behind the freak label, he went out in a blaze of glory. But what if he didn't? What if Eddie Munson survived? This is the version where the bats didn't win, where the riff kept playing, where Eddie made it home. The sky over the Upside Down was buzzing, electric, angry, pulsing red. The clouds twisted like something alive, shadows dancing across the trailer park like ghosts. Eddie Munson stood on the roof of his flipped trailer, guitar slung across his chest, fingers flexing like a boxer before the bell. Dustin sat below, half hyped out of his mind. Eddie struck the first chord, and the world screamed back. Master of Puppets blasting through the makeshift amp, slicing through the dead air of Vecna's twisted world. Lightning cracked as if on cue, the storm feeding off every riff. Eddie's fingers moved like fire, shredding with a kind of reckless joy you only see when someone's playing for their life, and loving it. It was metal. It was chaos. It was everything he was, and it worked. Above the trees, the Demobats turned, hundreds of them. They came swarming around the trailer in a wave of teeth, wings, and shrieks. Dustin's eyes went wide. Dude, they're coming! Eddie just grinned and cranked the amp even louder. That's the idea. As the last solo rang out, they dove inside the trailer and barricaded the doors. Dust and ash rained from the ceiling. The swarm was pounding from every angle, screeching and clawing to get in. They had done their part. They had drawn the heat, just like they were supposed to. Now it was time to fall back and get out. Except, Eddie didn't move. He stood at the boarded-up window, breathing heavy, jaw clenched. Something flickered behind his eyes. Fear? No. Something heavier. Resolve. He turned to Dustin, who was already prepping to climb back up the rope to the real world. Hey Henderson, he said, voice low. Dustin paused mid-climb. What? Eddie stepped over to the rope and cut it clean through. The rope hit the floor like a coiled snake. What the hell, man? Eddie didn't flinch. I'm buying them more time. They need this. We need this. Dustin's voice cracked. No, that's not the plan. Eddie, we go back together. Eddie backed away, grabbing the trash can lid he'd turned into a shield and a broken spear from the wreckage. That was your plan, dude. I've got mine. And then he was gone, charging through the back door into the storm of wings outside. The Demobats hit him like a wave. He swung wildly, stabbing and slashing, shield raised as they clawed at his arms and shoulders. He screamed, not in fear, but fury. Every blow was a rejection of who they thought he was. Every step was for Chrissy, for Dustin, for all the people who ever looked at him and saw a monster. He wasn't running this time. He was standing his ground. But even heroes bled. His arm tore open from a slash. He staggered backward, nearly knocked off his feet. The bats closed in, a cyclone of wings and fangs. He swung the spear like a madman, yelling until his throat burned. And back inside, Dustin was losing his mind. He was pacing, grabbing anything he could, anything that might help. A radio, a pipe, a flashlight. His hands landed on an old tackle box and cracked it open. And that's when he saw it. A half-empty can of gasoline, a pack of New Year's fireworks from last winter, and a lighter. His eyes lit up. Outside, the storm roared above the Upside Down like a wounded beast. The blood-red clouds swirled faster now, drawn tighter into the sky's center as if Vecna himself was watching. The trailer's roof groaned under the weight of wings. Demobats scratched and shrieked and slammed against every surface with relentless hunger. Eddie was in the middle of it all, torn between fury and adrenaline. Every second stretched like hours. Blood poured from his shoulders where claws had raked deep. His makeshift spear was slick with grime and ichor, vibrating with every swing as more Demobats spiraled down to replace the ones he'd taken out. His chest heaved. His limbs were beginning to fail, but he didn't stop. Not this time. He had made a choice, and the Upside Down had answered. Inside the trailer, Dustin was pacing. No, not pacing. Panicking. His heart thundered as he stared at the severed rope. The climb home was gone. So was the plan. Everything had unraveled the moment Eddie cut that line and ran into the horde like some D&D warlord hell-bent on going out in battle. But Dustin knew that wasn't how this should end. Not for Eddie. He tore through the trailer like a kid possessed, eyes darting from drawer to drawer, hands shaking. Somewhere in the chaos, he found the leftover fireworks, small, cylindrical, bright red. The kind meant for backyard chaos, not monster wars. Still, they'd have to do. There was also a gas can tucked beside the couch, probably left over from one of the many failed attempts to fuel stolen lawnmowers or dirt bikes back in the real world. Dustin grabbed it without thinking, dragged it to the window, and kicked the wooden slats out with the force of pure desperation. The air that hit him was sour and heavy, the kind of air that clung to skin and reminded you that this world was wrong. He poured the gasoline across the edge of the trailer and scattered the fireworks into the wet trail. Then he climbed out through the side window and crept along the trailer's edge, staying low. In the distance, barely visible through the thick dark and bat wings, he could see Eddie, a blur of black hair, swinging wildly beneath the sky. There was so much blood. Dustin didn't think. He just struck the lighter. The fire caught instantly, racing along the gasoline path like a snake made of flame. The fireworks ignited a second later, one by one. Screams of color exploded into the dark, lighting up the sky in fractured blues and greens. The noise was deafening, unnatural. It didn't belong in the Upside Down, and that's what made it work. The Demobats flinched. A chunk of the swarm peeled off from Eddie, drawn toward the heat and sound. Some circled, some crashed into the flames and scattered. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough. Eddie felt the shift in the air before he even understood what was happening. The pressure changed. The swarm thinned just enough. He looked up, breath ragged, eyes burning, and saw the chaos erupting near the trailer. In the middle of it, Dustin, dirt-streaked and wild-eyed, holding the lighter like it was a weapon. Eddie stumbled forward, dragging the dented trash can lid like a shield. The bats still came, less now, but still enough to kill. One latched onto his leg and he kicked furiously, nearly falling. Another dove for his neck and scraped past his cheek, leaving a fresh red line that soaked into his collar. But he kept moving. Each step was like pulling his body through wet cement. His lungs felt too small, his legs numb, but the sight of Dustin, alive, standing his ground, pulled him forward. The trailer door swung open just as he reached it, Dustin grabbing his arm and hauling him inside. The bats swarmed again behind them, slamming into the frame, clawing at the roof. They didn't have much time. The gate back to the real world flickered in the corner, their way out still shimmering with unstable light. On the other side, Robin and Steve were already shouting, reaching out, motioning for them to move. Dustin wrapped Eddie's arm around his shoulders and helped him to the wall. The climb was slow, torturous. Eddie's legs barely functioned anymore. Each movement sent fresh waves of pain through his side. His back was torn up, his shield gone, and one of his fingers bent the wrong way entirely. But he didn't complain. They climbed together. Behind them, the Demobats shrieked louder, regrouping now that the distraction had faded. The fireworks were dying, just as quickly as hope had flickered to life. Robin leaned through the gate, eyes wide with panic, and grabbed Dustin's wrist. Steve reached down for Eddie. Their grip barely held. With one final push, Dustin lunged through the gate, pulling Eddie behind him with everything he had. Steve grabbed hold and yanked. Robin kicked away a bat that tried to bite through the gap. Then it was done. The last of the swarm slammed into the wall a second too late. The rope burned, the gate quivered, and the boys were through. They collapsed in the attic, choking on real air, coughing, bleeding, alive. Eddie's chest rose and fell like a storm was trapped inside it. Blood soaked through his shirt. His hair clung to his face. His eyes didn't fully focus, but he was breathing. He was alive. The room was silent for a second. Then Steve shouted for help. Robin rushed to grab supplies. Dustin dropped to his knees beside Eddie, trying not to cry and failing miserably. He reached out and pressed 2 fingers to Eddie's pulse. It was there. Faint, but strong. The hospital smelled like antiseptic and sadness. Muted voices drifted through the halls, blending with the soft squeak of sneakers and the occasional beeping monitor. Eddie Munson lay still in a dim room near the end of the second floor, his skin pale, wrapped in bandages and gauze, half his body covered in a patchwork of claw marks and bruises. His arm was in a sling, his leg elevated. There were stitches near his ribs and a long scar running down his back where the Demobats had nearly broken him in half. But he was breathing. That alone was a miracle. Outside his window, the sky looked normal, sunny even, but the town was still broken. The earthquake that had torn through Hawkins had left streets split, houses crumbled, entire neighborhoods leveled. People whispered about the death toll, about disappearances, about missing children and unexplained shadows. There were theories, conspiracies, wild stories, but no one knew the truth. No one wanted to. And still, through all of it, Eddie Munson remained the villain. The newspapers printed his name in bold headlines, pairing his face with blurry photos of the damage. He was the scapegoat again, the face of fear. Rumors swirled around town like dust in the wreckage. The satanic panic had found its figurehead. The town didn't care that he was just a kid. They needed someone to blame. So Eddie lived, but not freely. His name was still poison. Dustin visited every day. He brought snacks, comics, and updates from the group. But he never pushed. He never talked about what happened unless Eddie asked, which he rarely did. The moments came in silence, mostly, long stretches where they sat together and said nothing at all. Eddie didn't speak much for the first few days. His voice was ragged, his throat damaged from both the physical trauma and the screaming. But the quiet wasn't just from pain, it was from everything else. From the weight of surviving, from the heaviness of waking up to a world that hated him even more now than before. He thought about cutting the rope, about the moment he turned away and told himself this was how it needed to end. That dying would mean something, that it might rewrite how people saw him. But instead, he lived. And now he wasn't sure what to do with that. He started walking again on day 6, just a few unsteady steps from the bed to the chair and back. His leg throbbed with each movement. Every breath reminded him of cracked ribs and shredded muscle, but it was progress. The nurses said he was lucky to even be standing. They didn't know the half of it. Nancy and Robin stopped by once, bringing him a cassette player and a stack of tapes. Metallica, Dio, Sabbath, comfort food for his soul. They smiled, small and tired, and said he was a hero. He didn't correct them, but the word didn't sit right in his chest. Heroes didn't hide underground. Heroes didn't get blamed. By the end of the second week, he was discharged. Not to his trailer, that was gone, swallowed by the crack that split the trailer park in two, but to a safe house Hopper and Joyce had patched together on the edge of town. It wasn't much, a basement apartment with a leaky pipe and a couch that sagged in the middle, but it was quiet, and it was away from the eyes that watched too closely. Steve brought him a guitar. Not the original, Vecna's world had eaten that whole, but a battered Stratocaster someone had left behind in the school's music room. Eddie ran his fingers over the strings, tuning it slowly, carefully. When he finally played, it was messy and raw, but it was his. He didn't shred the way he used to. Not yet, but it was a start. Outside, Hawkins tried to rebuild. The cracks in the earth were patched over with concrete. The stories faded into whispers. Memorials were set up. Flowers, candles, framed pictures of kids no one would see again. Eddie stayed away from them. He knew his face would never be welcome near those altars, no matter what the truth was. But that didn't stop the group from honoring him in their own way. One night, they gathered in Mike's basement, just the core crew. Dustin handed Eddie a box. Inside was a small metal medallion, forged out of a melted D20 dice. They had turned it into something meaningful, something theirs. It wasn't public, it wasn't loud, but it meant everything. He wore it around his neck under his hoodie, quiet, private, not for the world, for them. The guilt lingered longer than the pain. There were nights he sat awake staring at the ceiling, wondering what would have happened if Dustin hadn't come back, if the fireworks hadn't worked, if that last bat had bitten deeper, faster. He'd made peace with death once. Now he was forced to wrestle with life again, and it felt heavier. But then there were other nights. Nights where the sky was clear, where the guitar didn't feel so foreign in his hands, where he'd sit on the back porch of the safe house, hoodie pulled up, fingers on the frets, playing softly under the stars. No lights, no crowds, just the sound of music echoing through a town that would never know what he gave up for them. He didn't need their applause. He was alive. That was enough. What are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.